Ingmar Bergman based Faithless, as I understand it, on a woman that he knew in 1949 and wrote about in his autobiography. Now, why do you think he never made this film himself?
First of all, I think he couldn't make it because what happened in the movie has always filled him with so much guilt. He was the director, and what happened between him and the woman really happened in real life. And I know when I got the script first, the script was like a monologue, and I asked him, why don't you have anything about forgiveness in him? And he said, it's unforgivable, and I think that is the main reason why he couldn't make it, because for him it was like an open wound. And it's strange because in his long life, I'm sure he'd done a lot of things that was almost more unforgivable. I'm a witness to that. But somehow this stayed with him. And because he had said this, that it was unforgivable, and because he did not want to include in his script the forgiveness, and because he gave me this monologue, I was free somehow to forgive him, because what I did with the director, which was him, and the old man, which he called Bergman, but he said it had nothing to do with him, I read it the way that the two of them would meet. Because when the young director is talking about what he had done, in Ingmar's monologue, he was sitting by himself and feeling very bad. What I did in the movie, I took him in to the old man, to the writer called Bergman. So the two of them, to me, they were the same person. And while the young man said, I did this and it's still living within me, and so I let the old man, who is the writer, I let him lean forward and just stroke the young man like this. You are forgiven. And somehow Ingmar really liked that part of it. Although he didn't say it, but he really liked that.
Liv, can we go back to the beginning, when you were a young Norwegian actress? You had done some theatre and some film in Norway.
8 years, not some, a lot.
And I know that at that period you were very much aware of the films that Ingmar Bergman was making in Sweden, films like Smiles of a Summer Night and The Seventh Seal and Wild Strawberries. So can you tell us how you met him first?
Well, I was a very good friend, and she is still my best friend in the world, Bibi Andersson, an actress who had worked several times with Ingmar Bergman. And we had done a movie together, and I came to Stockholm to visit her. And like in all these strange books, I was walking on the street with Bibi Andersson, and there comes Ingmar Bergman and says hello to Bibi, and there I was standing. And he looked at me, and he knew I had filmed, he knew who I was, but we had never met, and he looked at me and said, "Oh, would you like to be in a movie?" And that's really how it happened. And he made, he had a script which he was going to do, where Bibi was having a big part, and he sent the script to me, and it was a really small part, 2 pages. Oh, was I reading those 2 pages, and I was so thrilled. And then suddenly, just before we were going to start, came the message, he is ill, he's in the hospital, he's not doing the movie. And Bibi and I, we were devastated, and because we were such good friends, we went to Poland and Czechoslovakia, and he wasn't really sick. I don't think he wanted to do the movie, but he was in a hospital. And while he was in the hospital, and Bibi and I, we were in Poland and Czechoslovakia, he was looking at pictures of Bibi and me, and he was struck by the likeness in our faces. And while we were in Czechoslovakia, the embassy got hold of us and said, telegram, this was in the days of telegrams, he said, Ingmar Bergman is going to make a movie, another movie, and you have to come home immediately. And we went home, and his idea had been on our faces, this movie which he wrote in a very short time in the hospital called Persona. And we started off in Stockholm, and after a week we went to the island of Fårö, which he already knew from Through a Glass Darkly, and did the movie there. And it was such a wonder. It was a small production, and some of it was improvised, and we were saying to each other, nobody's going to hear about this movie because it seemed rather strange. And you know, but we are playmates for life. And I even have a picture of Bibi and Ingmar and me, where Ingmar has written Playmates for Life on. And that turned out to be one of the most famous movies ever made, to the great surprise, not the least to Ingmar, actually.
Du har gjort mig så ont. Du har skrattat åt mig bakom ryggen. Tänk att jag har läst brevet som du skrev till doktorn. Tänk att jag gjorde det, för det var inte igenklistrat, och jag har läst det ordentligt. Och du fick mig att prata. Du fick mig att berätta sånt som jag aldrig har sagt till någon. Och så lämnar du vidare. Vilket studium, va? Du är inte... Nej, nu ska du prata! Om du har någonting att säga ska du jävla rinna!
I was really nervous because I didn't really know how to speak Swedish at the time, and we had such short notice. So I only had one word, and actually it was wrongly translated here. Yes, because her word is ingenting, which means nothing. And here it says stop it or something. And a lot of, scholars and so have tried to find out what did she mean when she said ingenting, nothing. And I don't really know what she meant. But that was my only words, which was good. And there was many things in this movie that I really did not understand at this age, because I was 26 years old. But I knew one thing for sure. I knew, in a way, I was portraying him. At this time, he was 45 or something, and I think it had come to a time in his life when it was a burden for him to speak, to explain himself, to be looked at through a magnifying glass. And I just felt this. He didn't say it because he doesn't talk about his scripts. He expects us to understand and to do and to feel. And I think it was my luck that I knew that and felt that, because since then, when he did movies, instead of writing the part of himself for a man, he wrote the part of himself for a woman, because he felt this instinctively. She can be me. As different as we were, both in age and temper and everything, there was something of recognition between the two of us. Otherwise, I think he would have continued to make movies for Max von Sydow, like he had done before.
So you made Persona, and then you went on and you made another 9 films with Ingmar Bergman. You also had, of course, a very close personal relationship with him. What was it like when you were actually living with him and making films?
Well, I just lived with him for 2 movies, and well, that could be bothersome. He comes to the breakfast table and he's had his demons and nightmares, and I knew listening to them I'm going to star in them in the next movie. So, and I was younger. No, that was tough. I'm joking a little about it. That was tough, and the best things that we shared, it was this understanding, feeling, connecting, and all that really became deeper when we lived apart. Because, you know, sometimes if you're living in a relationship also, you get so shadowed by other things, jealousy, insecurity, what is that about and whatever. When you live apart and you just keep the friendship, and in our case, the artistic connection, it is freer, it is better. So I was much, much happier for all the films that came later that I didn't have breakfast with him. Yeah. You asked me about what he did as a director. I can remember the one thing he said before we did this movie. He said to me, you know, you are the kind of woman who never bothers to close the door after her. And in a way, sometimes that's the direction you need. And there was also something really incredible with that movie. It is incredibly beautiful. And we shot it in an old castle in Sweden. And like you said, we had a genius for the cinematographer, Sven Nykvist. And Ingmar and Sven, for many, many days, weeks, they were going from room to room to see where the sun would be or the light would be, because they wanted to do it with so little artificial light as possible. So when we started to do the movie, you know, sometimes it was, okay, we have to stop here now, we're going to that room. Because it was so planned out to use the real light instead of artificial light. And of course there was some artificial light, but this was very much based on, it's a movie of light. I think it's one of the most beautiful films he has ever made. And also Sven, I think he got an Oscar for that movie.
Now, you mentioned earlier, Liv, working with Ingrid Bergman, the great Ingrid Bergman, on Autumn Sonata, where she plays your mother, and the fact that Ingmar and Ingrid didn't quite see eye to eye.
No, they didn't, and I'm not saying a secret because he wrote about it, and I cannot agree with him at all. She was fantastic. At this time, she was also very sick from a cancer that she knew and she would die from, and she did not survive it after a short time. But the two of them, it didn't work. Already on the first reading, she would stop now and then and she would say to him, so what did you mean with this? Why did you write this sentence like that? I don't think people talk like that. And of course, if you have written the thing, that is devastating to hear. So I understand why he got upset too. But you know, she was so honest. She was honest about everything. I used to sit there and really admire her as a woman. And there was one episode in the movie where it almost stopped. After the first reading, he was thinking of stopping it because he felt so humiliated. But we continued. And then there was a long scene where the daughter, I'm playing a daughter who's like 40 years old, and she's still blaming the mother because the mother had made the choice of being a concerto pianist, and blaming the mother that her life was so unhappy. And according to Ingmar, at this time, you know, if the woman makes a choice of a career, it's terrible to the children, where obviously if a man does it, it's something to be so proud about. You have such a father. And this is how both Ingrid and I saw it, because we were both career women, and we asked, you have to change some of the things. I mean, it's wonderful she's a pianist. And no, he wouldn't change. And then we said, can we act a little against your words? Oh yes, just act against the words if you want to. And And so it was this scene where this 40-year-old, and I had pigtails and big glasses because, you know, my life was ruined by this mother who had the career. And I go on and on the whole night. I'm telling the mother, my life was so miserable and everything was bad because of your career. And the mother is listening and listening and listening. And because I had a long monologue, we take me first. And then the camera is to turn towards Ingrid, the mother. And the mother is to say, according to the script, please hold around me, please love me. And I thought that was wonderful. I saw myself do that. And I thought, this she must really like, because this is what, you know, mothers are saying all the time, whatever happens to them. We turned the camera towards Ingrid, and Ingrid said, I am not going to say that. I want to slap her in the face and leave the room. And she meant it, and she wouldn't say it. And the two of them started to really make a big thing there, and it was embarrassing. We thought, no, it's going to be over. And so the two of them went out in the corridor, and we heard them shouting and shouting, you know, the genius and the star. And of course, in the end, the genius wins. They always wins. And in came, you know, the star and the genius. And she was to say the lines, please hold around me, please love me. But I tell you, the way she said that, she was picturing every woman through the centuries who said, I'm sorry, you know, this is, I didn't mean it, whatever. It was so much anger, there was so much, and the lines came out. And yeah, she was fantastic.
You're here in Sydney directing a production of A Streetcar Named Desire for the Sydney Theatre Company with Kate Blanchett and Joel Edgerton. How's it going?
It's going incredible because Tennessee Williams is a poet and has written a play again about being seen and hoping for connection, and I have this incredible cast that are so creative and so wonderful. It couldn't have been better. And then I've been to theaters all over the world, and I have never seen the crew, everybody who's part of this. So much was ready already on the first rehearsal day. You know, what is a director to do? You have geniuses on lighting, you have genius on sound, you have genius on, what do you call it, the design, costumes, everything. You have great people, and then you have these actors again, and they have the words of Tennessee Williams. I truly believe that I'm there to just make sure that the pauses and the movements will be part of the wonderful dance, which A Streetcar Named Desire is, because everything else has been given and is given by the people behind the stage and the people standing on the stage, and very much the blues. That sometimes are telling you the story when words are not enough, what the people feel, but they cannot say. And Tennessee Williams himself, you know, wanted the blues to be very much part of his play.
I'd like to thank Liv Ullman for being here and being so gracious.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you.